The Cubs have so many irons in the fire when it comes to pitching. It'd be bad of me just to pick out one player or two. I mean, they're talking to the Twins, they're talking to the Marlins, they're talking to the Rays, they're talking to the Orioles, they're talking to the Guardians, and I'd put the White Sox in there. But nothing's really materialized on the White Sox part. I was told nobody's been super aggressive for Luis Robert or even Hauser at this point. Yeah, let's talk deadline, and I'll tell you what I know and what I don't know, because there's a lot of uncertainty still. What I know is that Jed is trying hard. Now, I don't confuse activity with accomplishment. That's what my old pal Dan Jiggets used to say. So phone calls are just phone calls until a deal is done. I think it's all going to happen, or most of it, for the Cubs in the last 72 hours. I was surprised by the Ryan McMahon trade today. I thought that would happen late along with Eugenio Suarez. That's good news for the Cubs. The fact that McMahon went to the Yankees, it takes the Yankees out of the mix, and I do think the Cubs are in that mix. But it's going to be some stiff competition, and remember, the Cubs' priority is on the mound, not necessarily at third base. But can he get both things done? I think the answer is yes. It doesn't mean that he will. I'd probably put the over-under at 2.5 for, like, new players into the organization, and I would probably take the over. I think they're looking for a backup outfielder, especially in center, maybe that third baseman, and a pitcher or two. So I think there's still 3 or 4 additions. Whether one of them goes to the minors or not remains to be seen. But I think all of that's going to happen late. I mentioned this morning, I think he wants to try to get a pitcher before the week starts. It's just been really difficult sledding so far. Tons of competition. But I don't think Jed's any less committed or more committed. I think he's the same as he was a week or two ago, maybe even more because they've dropped to second place. But pitching is the priority, but Suarez is definitely in the mix. I can't go against that. I know Cap's been all over Suarez for a few weeks. I downplayed it a little bit, but I will say he's in the mix.
I like to hear that, Jesse. So my question for you is, you've been very upfront by saying that Jed had said this on the record, and that you believe it too, that they would not trade a top prospect for a rental. What about 2 rentals from Arizona? Would that let them put in a top prospect in the mix?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's some combinations that would go in that direction, but I don't think he's going to trade 2 of them. You know, I mean, I think it has to be a really sweet deal for the Cubs to trade Owen Casey for a rental, or maybe 2 would get it done. But straight up, no chance. They're not doing Gleyber Torres for Aroldis Chapman. But yeah, maybe there's a combination to be had there. And Mike Hazen and the GM of the Diamondbacks and Jed are good friends, work together in Boston. That connection could help. And it is possible. I'm not denying a Merrill Kelly or Zac Gallen along with Suarez, but it's still a long shot. It's still a long shot. I think Mike Hazen's going to go through the offers, especially for Suarez at the last day or two, and pick the best one. And I just don't know if the Cubs want to push those chips towards third base when pitching is so important right now. I mean, they're going with another bullpen game on Sunday. Ben Brown's going to get some time there again, but even whether he starts or comes in relief, right? It's a little bit of a shaky thing. Let's face it, after Imanaga and Boyd, it's a roll of the dice. There's good Cade Horton, there's okay Cade Horton. There's good Brown, there's bad Brown. Oh. And Tyen's still working his way back through 47 pitches over at Wrigley today, actually, and he'll go out on a rehab assignment. So let's not focus too much on third base when pitching is so important for this team.
Jess, any chance the Cubs and Sox dance here, and maybe are the Cubs potentially interested in Hauser and maybe Tauchman?
I don't think Tauchman necessarily, although he could play center. I'm not positive about the Tauchman part, but the answer to Hauser is yes. I think it is possible. I mean, like I said, Craig knows him better than anybody. Basically, we had struggles last year, and Craig just mentioned this is the best year of his career, and the Cubs have definitely noticed. We always talk about a crosstown tax that has to be paid if you make that kind of a deal. It's kind of why Cease and it costs so much to get Quintana for Cease and Eloy Jimenez at the time. Theo talked about that. Getz will trade with anybody, and I think Jed and Getz are tight, and I think they would make a deal like that. The Cubs have so many irons in the fire when it comes to pitching. It'd be bad of me just to pick out one player or two. I mean, they're talking to the Twins, they're talking to the Marlins, they're talking to the Rays, they're talking to the Orioles, they're talking to the Guardians. and I'd put the White Sox in there. But nothing's really materialized on the White Sox part. I was told nobody's been super aggressive for Luis Robert or even Hauser at this point. So let's see how it looks next week when we come down to the wire. But that's my take on the White Sox. No one's really jumped out and said, I need this guy or two to wow Chris Getz at this point.
We got good news for Cubs fans too, Jesse. The Marlins are rallying here in the top of the seventh inning, and they have now scored 4 runs. They had a bases loaded clearing double to make it 4-1, and a sacrifice fly just made it 5-1. So what was a 1-1 tie, the Marlins have put up a 4 spot here in the 7th, and the Brewers are down 4 runs.
Yeah, I like that. I like that it was a day game after a long West Coast trip. Like, you know me, I'm always talking about schedule. Like, Milwaukee's comes back. They have a weird Friday day game because they're having a alumni home run derby after the game. And here the Marlins come in and jump on them. I like that spot for the Marlins, potentially, and it looks like it's coming through. So, yeah, a chance for the Cubs to get back into first place. I mean, it's Shota Imanaga, day. They usually win when he pitches, even though Hauser's been great. 10 starts, 189 ERA. There's a game the Cubs need to win, especially after dropping 2 or 3 at home to the Royals.
Is there a little juice to this game, Jess? I mean, Crosstown Classic, you've got a White Sox team that scored 49 runs since the All-Star break. They're 5-1, and a Cubs team that has been good all season long. A little juice here?
No doubt. Standing room only tonight. Maybe a few scout seats if you want to buy those, but basically standing room only tonight. And I'm told the weekend is jam-packed. I don't know if they're standing room only Saturday and Sunday, but should be a great atmosphere tonight. They've got the fireworks afterwards, and they're the way the Sox are hitting, there might be fireworks during the game. I mean, they were fantastic on the road. They just look more aggressive, more comfortable at the plate. Something I was talking to Will Venable about. Think about it. Young players first up, you could be a little more passive. Now they're jumping on fastballs, being aggressive, looking like major leaguers at the plate. That was a heck of a road trip. So Shota needs to be careful. Not that he isn't always careful. He's such a good pitcher, but I think this White Sox team is going to try to jump on him like they did a lot on the road trip. And a lot of juice to this series, I think, because the White Sox are playing better and the Cubs are in a dogfight all of a sudden. I mean, it's just a few weeks ago. I think you and me, Waddle, we both agreed that Milwaukee would not pass them.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yep.
And they did. Just a game, but they did. They've done it twice now. So I'm surprised by what's gone on, especially how well Milwaukee's played. But they're in a dogfight the rest of the way, and that includes the trade deadline as both teams look for pitching and maybe third baseman.
Jesse, yesterday and today I gave the Sox and Colson Montgomery credit for doing what he's been able to do after doing the unheard and going to Arizona in the middle of a season from AAA. Did the Sox, in their wildest dreams, ever think it could go this way? I know desperate times called for desperate measures, but could they have ever guessed that he'd be up now and hitting pretty well and helping the team?
I haven't asked anybody that direct, but I would think not. I would think that this is a little bit of a surprise to go to Arizona and then end up in this moment a couple months later. I think it's a reminder how long a baseball season is. You can have 3 seasons within a season. I would suspect they're surprised. I haven't, like I said, asked anybody directly, but it's a great storyline. And we said it at the time, as nutty and as White Soxy as it felt, maybe there was something to it. It's a long enough year. If your guy is struggling, why let him continue to struggle? I gave it a shot, and maybe it's something to think about in the future. Let's sit him down and fix this thing and not wait to the off season. Maybe easier to do on a rebuilding team than a contending team. But I give the Sox credit for trying something outside the box, and it seemingly has worked here.
Anything else that we need to know about, Jesse?
Well, I think one injury note. Javier Assad, remember him? He could be that proverbial, trade of a pitcher, even though he's coming back from just an injury. He pitched yesterday. He actually threw to Miguel Amaya in Arizona. He's going to join the team here to throw a bullpen and then go out on a rehab stint to Iowa. So at the same time that Taillon's going out, Assad is as well. Now, who knows how either pitcher is going to come back, but at least their bodies to eat up innings instead of these bullpen games, which, by the way, the Cubs are 0-3 on. So as the deadline approaches, think about those 2 pitchers coming back from injury and the chance for Jed to add as well. This roster could look a lot different in a week or 10 days as Assad returns. So I think that's an interesting development. I never liked Assad like as a 6 month every 5. I thought he would wear down, but for a 2 month run, we've seen many guys do this sort of thing, and Brandon Woodruff has come back and looked great. So you never know what Assad could bring to the table. There's always a mystery guy that happens late, whether it's an acquisition or a guy coming back from injury. Porter Hodge is now in Iowa throwing. So again, another pitcher that's returning from injury. So the Cubs will have some choices, and what looks like something that looks, a little light right now, in a week to 10 days could look a lot better because they do need pitching. There's no doubt that's a priority. I think that's why Jed's been pulling out his hair. He wants to get something done. Takes two to tango. You got to have the right price. I get that they don't want to rip apart the farm system for the future, but trust me, Jed was around Theo long enough. He's been around long enough himself to know that you've got to go for it a little bit. And look, I heard you arguing with Nick. I think both of you are kind of right and maybe even a little wrong. They have a shot. They just won't be the favorites when they get there in October. They have a shot.
Well, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I think Nick has to sort of understand both sides of it. Like, yeah, of course there'll be underdogs for the Phillies or Dodgers, but how many underdogs win in the play? It happens all the time.
Right.
The fact that you even have a shot, that we're talking about this, is a victory in itself, considering what we thought in February and March we didn't know. So Jed gets all of that. He gets all of that. But he will have to make a decision at some point on the prospects here. But the bottom line is there's going to be new bodies here. It's just what level. What are they, the A-plus guys or sort of the B-level guys, remains to be seen.
All right, do you have time for me to play you some audio?
Yeah, of course.
All right, so Jesse's with us, and Waddle didn't weigh in on this yesterday. At the end of the show, we played it. This was from ABC 7 a couple of Mondays ago. Jesse, you're a reporter, so I want to hear your thoughts on this. Waddle, you heard this and watched it in the pre-show. This was a guy, the reporter, who was on the bike path on the lakefront when he was doing like a scene setter of how hot it is on Wednesday, okay? So this is what happens while he's giving his report on the heat.
But honestly, it's still pretty bearable, but obviously it's going to be a much different story a little bit later on. Of course, all eyes right now are on that extreme heat. Watch for much of, oh, shoot.
Okay. All right. Christian Pico's out there live this morning. We'll check back soon, Christian.
All right, so then you just hear the bird chirping. The camera is just still pointing straight. There's no one on there. And then they went back to him a few minutes later, and it turned out he saw a runner run into a bicyclist. The bicyclist went head over the handlebars, cracked his helmet on his head, and said, but he turned down medical assistance and everything's A-okay. As a reporter, Jesse, is that the way you would have handled it if you were in his shoes?
I'd like to think I'm a human being before a reporter, so I'm going to go with yes. What's the big deal if you miss a report, if you can help somebody that's injured, right? It's just a report, and then you have a funny story about it later, like he probably did. I thought he got hit by the bike listening to that. I didn't know. So, yeah, I think you be a human being first if you feel like you can help somebody in the moment.
I felt the same way. It's kind of the same word I use. I mean, you're a human first. So I get why he did what he did.